Another Small Gift, a short story by Lastufka. Read by Beka Gurney. For 5 years, I received Christmas cards from my dead uncle. Every year, I sent out 6 cards, and every year, I got 6 in return. One from my mom, my younger sister, Charlotte, my friends from college, Sarah and Jamar, my supervisor, Lisa, and finally, my very much alive, as far as I knew, Uncle Mike. My Christmas cards are fairly standard. I write a short letter about how work is going and what my cat, Archimedes, has been up to throughout the year. I always sign it, Miss you, Emma. Finally, I seal up the red or green envelope, whichever color Hallmark includes in the cheap bulk set that year, and send it off. And I always got 6 cards back. As far as gifts go, a card is pretty small, but I've kept them all anyway. I even have some from when I was in grade school. Charlotte's are the best. She sends a bunch of Polaroids of her and her family out on the town in Newcastle. She moved to Australia with her husband, Josh, the summer after high school, as soon as they could afford a pair of plane tickets. They married when they were only 19. She fills her letters with updates on Lucas, the sweetest nephew ever. I can't wait to meet him when I make it down there. My supervisor's cards are the worst. She sends a bland, machine-printed, happy holidays. Uncle Mike's are better than most. He writes with updates on any special hunting trips he took or a rare new addition to his baseball card collection. His Christmas cards are always signed, "Smoke 'em if you got 'em, Uncle Mike." Did you tell Charlotte? That was the first thing Mom asked when I told her I thought Uncle Mike had died. We were sitting in her living room. She was on the couch, and I was on the love seat. My palms were damp with sweat. My heart raced. On my lap, I clutched one of the throw pillows Mom had knitted. I was so caught off guard, I didn't understand the question. "Emma, have you told your sister yet?" "No," I said. "I drove straight here, Mom. Maybe you didn't hear me. Oh, thank goodness," Mom said. "Charlotte couldn't handle this." She let out a long, held-in breath. Panic drained from her face, but the sadness and tiredness both stuck. I never had the relationship with Uncle Mike that Charlotte did. He was her godfather, and once she was old enough to handle a bow and arrow safely, she had joined him on almost every hunting trip he took. I preferred not to freeze in the woods and kill innocent deer at 6 in the morning. Despite Charlotte's special bond with Uncle Mike, I never felt left out. He always made time for me too, especially when Charlotte and I were younger and we all lived above Mom's bakery. He used to take us kids out for a movie and ice cream. I protested every time he dragged us to a new Lord of the Rings film, but secretly, I loved it. While he was busy cheering whenever an orc took an arrow to the chest, I longed to live among the elves, to learn their language, their songs. I think he saw through my put-on protests, though he never called me on them. Those afternoons were so much fun. After Mom moved Charlotte and me up to Cellar, which feels like the smallest town in all of Ohio, Christmas cards became all that Uncle Mike and I shared. He'd taken over for the lease on our old apartment, and, with us gone, he was the last Brooks family member left in our hometown of Granville. We visited during the holidays for the first few years, but that stopped as we all got older and busier. And after Charlotte moved down to Australia, Mom was the only one I got to spend the holidays with. Maybe that's why I always go so over the top with gifts. My cards may be fairly standard, but my presents are always big productions. I don't do small gifts. Preparation for this year's big present took me back down to Granville in the middle of summer. Christmas in July, as the department stores say. I was there to visit the bakery we used to live above. Mom owned it for 15 years before we moved up to Cellar. I wanted to interview some of her old customers, the folks who lived in town and bought from her every week. I planned on framing a retrospective photo collage surrounded by kind quotes from all her regulars. I knew Mom was proud of the years she invested in the bakery. She still brought it up from time to time, but didn't have any mementos around to remind her of it. I thought that was sad. I've covered my walls in my own mementos, framed ticket stubs from concerts, my diploma from Ohio State University, and of course, so many of Charlotte's Polaroids. A photo collage for Mom would be perfect. The right amount of sappy, nostalgic, and thoughtful. Like I said, I don't do small gifts. I'd definitely cry. She'd maybe cry. What more could you want from Christmas morning? And since I had already made the long drive down, I thought it'd be fun to surprise Uncle Mike, who, as far as I knew, still lived in our old apartment above the bakery. The new bakery owners had painted over Mom's sign and taken down the floral awning I'd helped her hang when I was just 10 years old. I wished I could have gotten a scrap of that to frame. But for all that had changed, the air outside still smelled of warm, baked bread, the best smell in the whole world. I was so excited to see Uncle Mike again, and maybe drag him out to a showing of Lady Bird, or really anything that didn't co-star an orc. Only, when I rang the bell for the upstairs apartment, Uncle Mike didn't answer the door. A Mr. Chen did. Mr. Chen informed me he had lived there for years. Mr. Chen, who was at least a foot shorter than my uncle and who had a lot more hair than him, said he had a bag full of Michael Brooks mail if I wanted it. Mr. Chen was pretty sure the apartment freed up after Michael Brooks died. And before I could process anything Mr. Chen had said, he disappeared back into the hallway. Wait, Uncle Mike died? Years ago? No, no, that was wrong. Uncle Mike had won an archery competition just last year. And the year before that, he'd scored a mint Pete Rose rookie card. He wrote it in his Christmas letter that he'd been chasing that card for more years than he could count. As far as I knew, dead men didn't bid up rookie baseball cards. But Mr. Chen returned and handed me a plastic grocery bag full of mail. There were a few issues of Bowhunter magazine and a few Christmas cards, still sealed in cheap red and green Hallmark envelopes, fat with unread letters. I looked up at Mr. Chen. He gave me an apologetic smile and disappeared back into the hallway, closing the door behind him. It was the hallway that led to the apartment above the bakery, where Charlotte and I would sit on the stairs and do our homework, and where Uncle Mike had stood, waving goodbye, when we moved up to Cellar all those years ago. I pulled out my phone. Mr. Chen didn't know what he was talking about. I glanced at the unopened Christmas cards in the grocery bag. So, Uncle Mike moved and forgot to leave a forwarding address. It was that simple. I opened my browser app and searched Michael Brooks, Granville, Ohio. And Michael Brooks, 58, lost his battle with lung cancer on April 12, 2013, at his Granville home. He worked at IBM for the last 22 years and enjoyed a quiet life of collecting sports memorabilia, bow hunting, and bowling with his livin' on a spare teammates. He is survived by his sister, Ruth Brooks, and 2 nieces, Emma and Charlotte. Lung cancer. Smoke 'em if you got 'em. And Uncle Mike had always had 'em. My legs buckled, partly in disbelief, partly in shock, and if I'm being honest, partly in terror. I was looking at his obituary from 5 years ago in the Granville Sentinel. If Uncle Mike was dead, who won that archery competition? Who bought Pete Rose's card? Who sent me those Christmas cards? "How much do you know?" Mom asked. Her house was always so quiet. My heart was still racing. I was convinced she could hear it all the way from the couch across the room. "Wait, did you already know?" I wiped my sweaty palms on my jeans and started to pick at the threads of the throw pillow on my lap. Mom didn't answer. "Mom, did you already know? About Uncle Mike?" She cleared her throat. "I knew 5 years ago, when it happened. But I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me?" "He got sick. It progressed quickly. He didn't tell me until the end. I told him I'd drive down the night he called, but he assured me he was fine. Said he'd see me for my birthday in a few weeks. He wanted to come up and celebrate with us. He wanted to see you. Only he never made it up here. 3 days before my birthday, I got the call that he had passed. But I didn't know how to tell your sister or you, so I didn't." Mom wiped at her eye. She hadn't let us kids see her cry until we were both grown up, and even then, she still tried to hide it. "After he died, I put a forward on his mail. A lot of it was junk, but when his Christmas card arrived from your sister, I opened it. She said she missed him. She was busy. She couldn't wait to hear about what he'd been up to this past year." Mom hesitated, then added, "She also said she and Josh were trying to get pregnant again, but asked Mike not to mention it to me yet. I think she found it easier to talk to him. Even when you two were little, after your father left, I had to check in with Mike sometimes to find out how Charlotte was really doing." Lucas would have been less than a year old at that point. She didn't put that in my letter either. And so I wrote her back. "You what?" "I sent her a card and signed it, 'Love, Uncle Mike.'" "He's never signed anything, love." I don't know why this is what I focused on. I couldn't even picture the word in his handwriting. I'd felt he loved me, but I didn't think he'd ever actually said the word. "I know. Your sister caught it too, and wrote back, giving him a hard time about getting soft in his old age. Of course, I've signed them ever since. Smoke 'em if you got 'em," we said in unison, our voices creating a sad, atonal harmony. She still needed him, Emma. It was only her second Christmas out in Australia. Without me, without you, without Mike. She was alone out there, taking care of a newborn. She wasn't alone. Mom dismissed me with a wave of her hand. They'd only been married a few months. Sure, Josh has stepped up recently, I'll give him that. But back then, that year, she wasn't ready. She still needed us. All of us. So I sent the card. And then I had to send one to you too. Before I knew it, a few years had passed, and there was no way to stop. I looked up from the throw pillow on my lap. I didn't know where to start. I'd missed his funeral. Was there even a funeral? Did Mom drive down there and attend it alone? Just her and his bowling pals? I'd missed my chance to say goodbye. I'd been writing letters to a dead man for 5 years. All because Mom didn't think Charlotte could handle the news? The mail forward expired before the next Christmas, Mom said. I don't know who gets Charlotte's letters now, but I know she still writes them. So I keep sending his cards. I have to. For her. How long do you think you can keep this up? I said. Eventually, Charlotte will find out. She'll come home and visit and... Mom shook her head. There's nothing for your sister here. You know how hard it was for her growing up, how much she wanted to escape. She doesn't even call unless I yell at her in an email. Oh, I know she loves us, but I accepted a long time ago that she's not coming back. I opened my mouth to argue, but then it hit me. Mom was right. Ever since the move to Cellar all those years ago, Charlotte had been miserable. She was angry all the time, and after high school, Charlotte escaped. She'd found her people, and as much as she did love us, all of us, her people weren't here. So, you're just going to send her cards from Uncle Mike forever? I asked, hoping my voice sounded softer this time. For as long as I can. Mom wiped at her eye again. After your dad left, Mike was the only father figure Charlotte had. She idolized him. And he loved her, both of you, right back. He was so proud of the young women you were becoming. I want you to know that. When I write those cards, they're not my words. They're his. They're things he told me when he was still alive. And now, sometimes I think, no, I know. He's still telling me things. He's putting his words into those cards through my hand. Mom, you realize that's ridiculous, right? I knew Charlotte wouldn't understand. But I'm surprised you don't, Emma. You've always taken more after me. I wouldn't lie to someone I love. Lie? It's not a lie. I told you, they're his words, not mine. And she's so happy to get his updates every year. I can't take that away from her. Not yet. And you can't either. But she's just starting to know happiness these last few years. This would destroy her. Every day that Charlotte doesn't know what she's lost is another small gift. Another small gift. It was a frightening thought. A terrible thought. You can't tell her, Mom said. At least, not until after I do. I thought I understood. Actually, the truth is, I didn't know what to think. But Charlotte had been so happy these last few years. Happier than I'd ever seen her. Was protecting that so wrong? I won't tell her. I stopped picking at the throw pillow. I promise. When Christmas came that year, I only sent out 5 cards. I didn't want any more of my holiday letters to end up in Mr. Chen's grocery bags. but I still got 6 cards in return. Apparently, Uncle Mike sprained his wrist while at target practice and was taking some time off from his hunting trips and competitive shooting to catch up on his reading. He was working his way through Ray Bradbury's short fiction, and boy, there was a lot of it. Mom told me later over Christmas dinner that The Martian Chronicles was the best of it so far. I put his card at the front of my decorated table in the hallway of my apartment so I could see it every time I went out that December. It was the same table Archimedes usually slept under. I think Uncle Mike would have approved. He would have wanted to protect Charlotte, too. It occurred to me then, maybe Uncle Mike and I were closer than I thought. My Christmas card collection easily outnumbered his baseball card collection, and it seemed he appreciated tradition as much as I did. He never once failed to send a card while he was alive, or after. The following year, Mom died in September. The flu hit early here in Ohio. Mom wasn't able to fight off her pneumonia, which she'd developed every winter over the past few years. That Christmas, I only got 4 cards. Lisa needed to change the ink in her printer. The Happy Holidays message was streaks of magenta instead of black. Jamar was celebrating a recent promotion. I couldn't remember the last time we'd talked. Sarah got engaged. There was a picture of her and her fiancé in the card, but the photo was wallet-sized, much too small to frame for my wall. Charlotte's card arrived from Newcastle via airmail. She and Josh and Lucas were smiling in every Polaroid. She wrote page upon page of updates, including the news that I was going to be an aunt again. She and Josh are 5 months along. They're expecting a baby girl. It took longer than they wanted, but Charlotte was over the moon. I soaked up every word. Mom's old knitted throw pillow on my lap as I sat cross-legged on my couch. I cried happy tears for the first time in a long time. I'm back up to sending out 6 cards again this year. 1 each for Sarah, Jamar, and Lisa, and 3 for Charlotte. 1 card signed, Miss You, Emma. 1 signed, Smoke 'em if you got 'em, Uncle Mike. And 1 signed, Love, Mom. Every day Charlotte doesn't know what she's lost is another small gift.